My parents said no kids allowed at Thanksgiving, including my son, but my sister's children had their own table. I was elbow deep in pie crust dough when the call came. Flour dusted the countertop like early winter snow, and beside me, Eli hummed as he carefully measured vanilla extract for our pumpkin filling. At 10, he was meticulous about recipes, a trait he certainly didn't inherit from me. Mom, it's exactly 1 teaspoon, right? Not a little more? His eyes, serious behind his glasses, searched mine for confirmation. Exactly 1, I smiled, wiping my hands on a kitchen towel as my phone vibrated across the counter. My mother's name flashed on the screen. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, right on schedule for the annual dinner coordination call. It's Grandma, I told Eli, whose face brightened instantly. Maybe she's calling about your special apple crumble for Thanksgiving. I hit the speakerphone button. Hey, Mom. Rachel, darling. Her voice carried that familiar hint of rehearsal, the tone she used when she'd practiced what to say. I'm calling about Thanksgiving arrangements. Perfect timing. Eli and I were just discussing desserts. He wants to bring his. About that, she cut in smoothly. Your father and I have decided to do things differently this year. We're going for something more intimate. I frowned, glancing at Eli, who is now watching me, the measuring spoon forgotten in his hand. What do you mean by intimate? No kids this year, my mother said breezily, like it wasn't a dagger to the chest. Just adults. We're thinking formal place settings, crystal glasses, that sort of thing. You understand. The kitchen went silent. Eli's expression fell so quickly it was as if someone had switched off a light. You're saying Eli can't come to Thanksgiving? I clarified, keeping my voice steady for his sake. Well, none of the children will be there, she said, though her tone lacked conviction. It's nothing personal. We just want a grown-up dinner this year. You can drop by in the evening for dessert if you'd like, but the dinner itself will be adults only. I turned away from Eli, lowering my voice. Mom, you know I'm a package deal. Eli has been looking forward to this for weeks. He's already planning his contribution. I'm sorry, Rachel, but we've already arranged everything. The table is set for 8 adults. No exceptions. My throat tightened. Even for your only grandson? Don't be dramatic, she sighed. It's one Thanksgiving. Surely you can find something else to do with him. Or get a sitter and come alone. It would do you good to have an adult evening. The casual cruelty of her words stunned me into silence. Behind me, I heard Eli's footsteps retreating from the kitchen. I'll pass, I said finally. If Eli's not welcome, then neither am I. Rachel. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. I hung up, my hands trembling slightly. I found Eli in his room, curled up on his bed with a book he wasn't really reading. His eyes were fixed on a spot on the wall, unnaturally still. Hey, buddy. I sat beside him, the mattress dipping under my weight. I'm sorry about that. It's okay, he said automatically, the way kids do when it's anything but okay. I don't care about stupid Thanksgiving anyway. But I knew better. Thanksgiving at my parents' sprawling Victorian home was the highlight of Eli's year. The massive dining room with its antique table that could seat 20. The way my father would let him ring the ancestral dinner bell. The treasure hunt my mother traditionally organized for the grandchildren in the garden before dinner. Except there weren't supposed to be any grandchildren this year. You know what? I said, inspiration striking. Let's do our own Thanksgiving. We'll invite the Hendersons from downstairs, and maybe Ms. Patil from your school. We'll make it even better than Grandma's. Eli shrugged, unconvinced. But it won't be the same without the big table and Grandpa's stories. No, I admitted. It won't be the same. It'll be ours. He nodded, though the disappointment lingered in the slump of his shoulders. I spent the next 3 weeks channeling my hurt into creating a perfect alternative Thanksgiving. I ordered specialty ingredients, found my grandmother's secret recipes, and even splurged on new dinnerware. Eli gradually warmed to the idea, especially when the Hendersons' teenage daughter agreed to come and promised to bring her famous chocolate pecan pie that Eli adored. Thanksgiving morning arrived with unexpected sunshine and a crisp breeze. Eli and I worked side by side in our small kitchen, the radio playing soft jazz as the apartment filled with a comforting sense of sage and roasting turkey. "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa miss us?" Eli asked suddenly, arranging rosemary sprigs around the turkey. The question pierced me. "I'm sure they do." I lied. My phone pinged with a notification. Absently, I checked it while stirring gravy. It was a social media alert. My cousin had tagged my sister in photos from Thanksgiving dinner. Curious despite myself, I opened the app. The images loaded slowly, each one a fresh wound. There was my family gathered around the familiar oak table, crystal glasses glinting in the chandelier light. My sister Jennifer beamed at the camera, her husband's arm around her shoulders. And there, at a smaller table decorated with construction paper turkeys and pilgrim hats, sat her twins, Madison and Mason, alongside my cousin's children. A kids' table. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. "No kids this year," my mother had said. The room spun slightly as the truth crystallized. It wasn't that no children were allowed. It was that my child wasn't allowed. I scrolled through more photos. The twins holding hands with my parents in front of the fireplace. Mason helping my father carve the turkey. My mother placing a crown made of autumn leaves on Madison's head in what appeared to be the traditional pre-dinner ceremony. "Mom, is the gravy burning?" Eli's voice snapped me back to our kitchen. I quickly shut off my phone and returned to the stove, stirring vigorously as my mind raced. What had I done to deserve this? What had Eli, sweet, thoughtful Eli who'd never been anything but respectful and loving toward his grandparents, done to be erased from the family portrait? "Everything okay?" Eli asked, studying my face with that perceptive gaze that always saw too much. I forced a smile. "Everything's perfect. Our Thanksgiving is going to be amazing." But as I turned away to hide the tears threatening to spill, I knew this wasn't about dinner or table settings or even holiday traditions. This was about something much deeper and more insidious. This was about who belonged and who didn't, about who was being groomed for the family legacy and who was being systematically pushed out. And as the guests began to arrive at our apartment, all I could think was, this wasn't about space or rules. It was about erasing us. Our makeshift Thanksgiving ended just after 9. The Hendersons left with containers of leftovers, and Ms. Patil had taken Eli downstairs to help her elderly mother set up a new tablet, a welcome distraction that gave me a moment alone. I poured myself a glass of wine and found myself scrolling through more pictures from my parents' house, each one twisting the knife deeper. There was Jennifer's husband, Tom, sitting in my father's study, the sacred inner sanctum where family business decisions had been made for generations. Tom, with his practiced smile and his MBA from a university that had accepted him largely because of my father's donations. Tom, who had somehow risen to executive vice president in just 5 years at Hartwell Logistics. I swiped to the next photo and nearly dropped my phone. Madison and Mason sat at my father's massive oak desk, spinning in his leather chair. On the desk were blueprints, expansion plans for the Western Distribution Center that I had been pushing for years. The plans, I was told, were on hold indefinitely due to budget constraints just 3 weeks ago. I zoomed in on the corner of the image. There it was, a stack of leather portfolios embossed with gold lettering. Hartwell Logistics, the next generation. The room seemed to tilt. I'd seen those portfolios before at a board meeting 6 months ago. When I'd asked about them, my father had dismissed them as just some marketing materials and quickly changed the subject. As CFO, I should have been consulted on any major initiative, especially one involving succession planning. But I wasn't, and now I understood why. I scrolled to another image, my mother in the kitchen with Jennifer, laughing as they prepared some dessert. The caption read, "Teaching the next CEO how to make dad's favorite pie. Hashtag family tradition, hashtag business and pleasure. CEO." The position I had been working toward my entire adult life. The position my father had all but promised me when I gave up a lucrative offer from Goldman Sachs to join the family business. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Rachel, it's Martin. Got a new phone. We need to talk about the Westridge account. Call me tomorrow." Martin Green had been one of our biggest clients for over a decade. Why would he be texting about Westridge on Thanksgiving night? I dialed his number immediately. Martin, it's Rachel. Is everything okay with Westridge?
Rachel, didn't expect you to call tonight.
Nothing urgent. Just wanted to verify something before our meeting next week. What meeting? I asked, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. A pause. The transition meeting. With your sister and her husband. Your father said you'd be stepping back from client relationships to focus on, what was it? Special projects. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm not stepping back from anything, Martin. This is the first I'm hearing of it. Well, this is awkward. Look, I got a call from your father last week. He said the company was restructuring, that you'd requested more flexibility for personal reasons. Something about your boy needing more attention. The audacity took my breath away. Using Eli as an excuse to push me out? That's absolutely not true. I figured something was off, Martin sighed. Listen, Rachel, I've worked with you for 12 years. You saved our account during the 2008 crash when everyone else was jumping ship. I'm not taking my business to some MBA hotshot who doesn't know a freight invoice from a birthday card. Relief washed over me. Thank you, Martin. Don't thank me yet. Things are changing at Hartwell. 3 of your biggest accounts got the same call I did. Peterson already signed new terms with Jennifer's team. Peterson, our second largest client, $20 million in annual revenue. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and logged into the company system. I navigated to the client database, searching for recent changes. Peterson's account had indeed been reassigned, not just to Jennifer, but to a new corporate entity, Hartwell NextGen LLC. An entity I knew nothing about despite being the CFO. The date of incorporation? 3 months ago. The registered agents? My parents and sister. Further digging revealed more accounts quietly transferred to this new entity. Nearly 40% of our business had been siphoned off without my knowledge. I leaned back, stunned. This wasn't a casual family slight. This was corporate espionage conducted by my own family against me. My phone pinged again. A new photo upload. This one showed the entire family gathered in front of the fireplace. My father stood with his arm around Jennifer, her husband on his other side. My mother sat in her chair, the twins at her feet. Behind them hung the portrait of my grandfather, the company founder. But what caught my eye was the small object in my father's hand, a golden key. The ceremonial key to Hartwell Logistics, traditionally passed down to the next leader of the company. I zoomed in, hoping I was mistaken. It was definitely the key, the one my father had shown me when I was 16, telling me, "Someday, Rachel, this will be yours. You're the one with the head for this business." Another photo showed him placing it in Jennifer's hands as everyone applauded. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt curdled into something harder, colder. This wasn't just about a holiday dinner or family drama. This was theft of my birthright, my career, my legacy, of the future I had planned for Eli and myself. The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to the present. I quickly closed the laptop as Eli's voice called out, "Mom, Ms. Patil says I'm a natural teacher." I showed her mom how to video call. I wiped my eyes and forced a smile. "That's wonderful, honey." But as he chattered excitedly about his evening, I was already formulating a plan. I pulled out my phone and texted Martin, "Can we meet tomorrow? I need to see all the paperwork they sent you." His reply came instantly, "My office. 8 a.m. They thought they could erase us from the family narrative without consequence. They had mistaken my accommodating nature for weakness, my focus on single motherhood for lack of ambition. They had forgotten who had kept the company books for the last 15 years, who knew every account, every client relationship, every financial skeleton in the Hartwell closet. They were about to remember. Morning came too quickly. I dropped Eli at school with extra hugs and promises of pizza for dinner, then headed straight to Martin's office in the financial district. The city was still waking up, streets glistening with overnight rain as I navigated through early traffic. Martin Green's corner office offered a panoramic view of the harbor, but I barely noticed it. My attention was fixed on the stack of documents spread across his conference table. "They sent these 3 weeks ago," Martin said, sliding a folder toward me. Transfer of account management, revised terms, the works. Your father's signature is on everything, alongside Jennifer's and Tom's. Yours is conspicuously absent. I flipped through the pages, stopping at a particular clause. They've increased the service fees by 12%? That's insane. Martin nodded grimly. That's why I called you. Jennifer claimed it was your idea, something about offsetting new infrastructure costs. But it didn't sound like you. Because it wasn't me. I sat heavily in a leather chair. When did this start, Martin? Really? He considered for a moment. The whispers? About 6 months ago. But I first noticed something was off last spring when I tried to schedule our annual review meeting with you, and your father insisted on joining. He never cared about those meetings before. 6 months. Around the time I'd requested a week off to take Eli to his academic competition in Boston. The first real vacation I'd taken in 3 years. I should have seen this coming, I murmured. Martin leaned forward. Rachel, I've known your family for 20 years. I watched you climb from the shipping floor to the C-suite. What exactly is going on here? The question unleashed a flood of memories. Me at 22, fresh out of college, turning down Wall Street to join Hartwell Logistics, our family's 3-generation shipping and logistics company. My father's proud smile when I completed my first international contract. My mother's reluctant admission that maybe the business wasn't just for the boys, after all. I remembered the night I discovered a $2.7 million discrepancy in our books, embezzlement by our then CFO, my father's college roommate. How I'd stayed up 3 nights straight, reconstructing transactions, following the money trail. How I'd presented the evidence to my father, watching his face age 10 years in 10 minutes. She saved us, he told the board the next day. My daughter saved this company. That was the day he promoted me to CFO. I was 26. Then came 2008, the global financial crisis that devoured shipping companies whole. Competitors folded daily. Our largest clients teetered on bankruptcy. Dad wanted to sell, take what we could get before we lost everything. But I had a different plan. Pivot to specialized logistics services for healthcare and technology clients, sectors that remained stable even in the downturn. Dad thought it was too risky. Mom called it foolish. I mortgaged my condo, liquidated my investment portfolio, and personally guaranteed the loans needed for the transition. If it failed, I would lose everything. If it succeeded, Hartwell would survive. It more than survived, it thrived. Within 18 months, we'd doubled our pre-crisis revenue. By 2012, we'd expanded to 3 continents. Dad called me a visionary. This will all be yours someday, he promised repeatedly. Then I got pregnant with Eli. Unplanned. Unmarried. The father, a consultant we'd hired for our European expansion, wanted nothing to do with the child. I didn't care. I wanted my baby. My parents were horrified. What will people think? My mother had wailed. The Hartwell name, Rachel. I gave birth to Eli on a Tuesday. I was back in the office the following Monday, newborn in a bassinet beside my desk. The message was clear. Motherhood wouldn't diminish my commitment to Hartwell. But something had changed. Subtle at first, being accidentally left off email chains, not invited to client dinners. Dad claimed he was protecting my time as a new mother. Then Jennifer married Tom, an investment banker with an MBA and the right connections. Suddenly, he was the golden child, the son my father never had. Within months, he joined the company. His rise was meteoric and engineered. Rachel. Martin's voice pulled me back to the present. You zoned out on me. I shook my head.
Sorry.
Just processing. I get it. But look, they've already approached Peterson and Franklin distributors with similar deals. Half your client portfolio could be gone by Christmas. He hesitated. They're systematic, and they're using the company's resources to do it. Yes, I said slowly, an idea forming. They are using company resources, aren't they? Resources I technically control. Martin raised an eyebrow. As CFO, you mean? As CFO, I confirmed, standing up with newfound purpose. Martin, I need copies of everything. And I mean everything: emails, proposals, contracts, whatever they've sent you. What are you planning? I gathered the documents carefully. They say blood is thicker than water, but what about sweat? What about 20 years of late nights, missed birthdays, and keeping the books clean when no one else would? I practically raised that business from adolescence to adulthood. I deserved better than a silent exile. My phone buzzed, a calendar reminder for the quarterly compliance review. The review I'd instituted after the embezzlement scandal. The review that gave the CFO me unilateral authority to examine any transaction, any account, anywhere in the company. I looked at Martin, a slow smile spreading across my face. They forgot who built the system they're using to betray me. Careful, Rachel, Martin warned. This is still your family we're talking about. I thought about Eli's face when he realized he wasn't welcome at his grandparents' Thanksgiving. About the photos of Jennifer's children being groomed for my position. About the ceremonial key that should have been mine. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't do what they've done. This is business now. And in business, I never lose. I left Martin's office with a renewed sense of purpose. They thought they were orchestrating my gradual, quiet removal, a death by 1,000 cuts that I wouldn't notice until it was too late. But they'd forgotten one crucial fact. I was the one who modernized our accounting systems. The one who implemented the digital transformation that allowed our global expansion. The one who knew every password, every backdoor, every quirk in the system. I pulled out my phone and called my assistant. Cancel my meetings for today. I'll be working remotely. It was time to remind everyone exactly who had built the legacy they were so eagerly redistributing. I didn't cry. I logged in. My home office was modest, a converted corner of my bedroom with a standing desk and dual monitors. But that afternoon, it became command central for what would likely be the most important audit of my career. One benefit of being the one who set up the accounting software? I knew where every skeleton was buried and who was paying for the burial. I started with the basics, following the money trail of Hartwell NextGen, LLC. The new entity had been capitalized with $5 million transferred directly from Hartwell Logistics' operating account. The authorization bore my father's signature and Jennifer's, but not mine. A clear violation of our company bylaws, which required the CFO's approval for any transfer exceeding $250,000. Strike one. Next, I examined expense reports. Tom had been busy, racking up nearly $85,000 in client development charges over the past 4 months. 5-star hotels in Miami, Vegas, Tokyo. First-class flights. Michelin-starred restaurants. I cross-referenced the dates with our client management system. No meetings were logged for most of these trips. I dug deeper, accessing Tom's corporate email through my administrative backdoor, a feature I'd implemented for compliance purposes that the board had forgotten about. There it was. Emails to Peterson, Franklin Distributors, and 6 other major clients, inviting them to exclusive getaways to discuss exciting new directions for Hartwell. The trips had been classified as strategic planning in our system, bypassing the normal client entertainment protocols that would have flagged them for my review. Strike two. But the real bombshell came when I examined the company's stock ledger. As a privately held corporation, Hartwell Logistics shares were tightly controlled, with my parents owning 60%, me holding 25%, and the remaining 15% distributed among a few minor shareholders, including my sister, who had received 5% as a wedding gift. Or, at least, that was how it had been 6 months ago. I stared at the current breakdown in disbelief. My parents still held 60%, but Jennifer's stake had mysteriously grown to 15%. My own share had shrunk to 15%. What the hell? I muttered, pulling up the transaction history. There it was. A transfer of 10% of company shares from Rachel Hartwell to Jennifer Hartwell Brooks, dated just 2 months ago. The digital authorization appeared to have my electronic signature. A signature I had never given. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. "Patricia," I said when my lawyer answered, "I need you to come over.
Now.
And bring your corporate fraud expertise." While waiting for Patricia, I continued digging. The share transfer had been processed during the week I took Eli to a science competition in Chicago, my first real time off in over a year. The paperwork had been rushed through on a Tuesday afternoon when I was sitting in an auditorium watching my son win first place for his environmental impact project. They had timed it perfectly. I printed everything: email exchanges, expense reports, client communications, the fraudulent share transfer documentation. By the time Patricia arrived, I had 3 stuffed folders and a timeline of events that made my blood boil. Patricia, a Harvard-educated lawyer who had been my roommate in college, whistled as she reviewed the evidence. "This is textbook corporate fraud, Rachel. The unauthorized fund transfers alone would trigger an SEC investigation if you were publicly traded." "What about the share transfer?" "They forged my signature." She nodded grimly. "That's securities fraud. Criminal offense." The words hung in the air. Criminal. My own family. What do you recommend? Patricia spread the documents on my coffee table. Legally, we file for an emergency injunction to freeze all company assets pending investigation. We notify the clients who were approached improperly. We prepare for litigation.
She paused.
But Rachel, this is your family. Once this ball starts rolling, there's no stopping it. I thought of my father's face when he handed Jennifer the ceremonial key, of my mother's casual dismissal of Eli, of 20 years of loyalty rewarded with betrayal. I want the injunction, I decided. Draft it tonight, but don't file it yet. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Playing chicken? Something like that. After she left, I called our head of IT, a woman who owed her job to me after I'd advocated for her promotion against my father's objections. "Diana, I need a favor. Complete discretion required." "Anything for you, Rachel," she answered without hesitation. "I need access to the Boardroom A/V system. Specifically, the ability to display content from my laptop to the main screen, remotely, without anyone knowing the source. Consider it done. When do you need it?" "Tomorrow." The emergency board meeting. The meeting my father had called without inviting me, but which Diana had tipped me off about this morning. "I'll text you the access credentials by morning," she promised. Next, I called Martin. "Are you free for breakfast tomorrow?" "For you? Always."
Good. And Martin?
"Remember how you once said your brother-in-law was the best private investigator in 3 states? I need his number." After making arrangements with Martin, I spent the next hour carefully selecting and organizing documents, building a presentation that would leave no doubt about what had been happening at Hartwell Logistics. My phone rang, my mother's number. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was terse. "Rachel, we've noticed some unusual activity in the company's system originating from your login. Your father is concerned you might be working too hard. Perhaps it's time we discuss your role going forward. Call me back." Translation: they'd realized I was looking at the files they didn't want me to see. I texted Diana. Time frame moved up. "Need boardroom access tonight." Her reply came immediately. "Already done. Credentials sent to your secure email." I worked through the night, fueled by a righteous anger I'd never experienced before. By dawn, I had everything I needed: documented evidence of financial misconduct, client poaching, fraudulent share transfers, and the systematic attempt to push me out of the company I had helped build. I showered, dressed in my sharpest suit, and woke Eli gently. "Honey, change of plans today. You're coming to work with me." He rubbed his eyes sleepily. "But it's not take your child to work day." "No," I agreed, helping him out of bed. "It's take back what's yours day." As we drove toward Hartwell headquarters, I glanced at Eli in the rearview mirror. He was reading a book, blissfully unaware of the corporate fight I was about to initiate. They had used him as an excuse to sideline me, made him a pawn in their game, excluded him from family traditions while pretending it was about having an adults-only holiday. They would regret that most of all. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the company's main conference room. I arrived at 9:30, Eli's hand firmly in mine. "Wait here with Diana for a few minutes," I told him in the IT department. "She's going to show you the server room while I set up." After ensuring Eli was happily occupied, I gathered my materials: a USB drive with my presentation, the injunction papers Patricia had prepared, and a digital recorder disguised as a thumb drive. My phone buzzed with a text from Martin. In position with guests. East entrance. I replied. 15 minutes. I peered through the boardroom's glass wall. My father sat at the head of the table, my mother to his right. Jennifer and Tom occupied the prime spots near them. The other seats were filled with board members, mostly my father's golf buddies who had rubber-stamped his decisions for years. A family portrait with me carefully cropped out. After retrieving Eli, I texted Diana. Now. Ready for an adventure? I asked my son. He nodded, excited by my conspiratorial tone. Are we doing something special?
Yes.
We're reminding some people who we are. In the hallway, Martin waited with 3 people. Patricia, my lawyer, James Chun from our second-largest competitor, and Robert Westfield, CEO of Peterson Industries, the client my sister had supposedly secured. Rachel, I'm not sure what this is about, Robert began, but your father's offer has been very generous. It wasn't his to make. I cut in, but we'll get to that. Eli squeezed my hand. Mom, are Grandpa and Grandma going to be mad? I knelt to his level. Maybe at first. But remember how we talked about standing up for yourself when something isn't right? That's what we're doing today. The lights in the boardroom dimmed as we approached, the screen at the front wall coming to life with the Hartwell Logistics logo. My father turned, annoyed at the interruption. I pushed open the doors. The conversation died instantly. My father's expression morphed from confusion to anger. Rachel, what is the meaning of this? This is a closed meeting. Is it? I smiled pleasantly. Funny, I didn't receive notice. As CFO and 25% shareholder, I'm fairly certain that's a violation of corporate bylaws. 15%, Tom corrected smugly. The share distribution was updated months ago. Actually, I said, that's the first item on our agenda. I guided Eli to an empty chair while my guests took seats along the wall. My mother's eyes fixed on Eli, her expression unreadable. We weren't expecting you, my sister said, tension evident in her voice. Clearly, I replied, connecting my laptop. My father stood. Rachel, this is highly inappropriate. The boy doesn't belong in a board meeting. His name is Eli, I said firmly. Your grandson. And he belongs wherever I say he belongs. The screen displayed the fraudulent share transfer. Let's begin with this. A transfer of 10% of my shares to Jennifer, purportedly authorized by me. I turned to the board members. On a day when I was in Chicago with my son at his science competition. Murmurs rippled through the room. Rachel, you're making a scene, my mother hissed. No, mother. I'm making a point. I advanced to the next slide, a detailed spreadsheet of Tom's excessive expenses. $85,000 in unauthorized client development charges in 4 months. All while I was told our budget couldn't accommodate the Western expansion project. Tom's face reddened. Those were authorized. By whom? Not by the CFO. I turned to Robert Westfield. Robert, tell the board about the proposal you received regarding Hartwell NextGen, LLC. Robert cleared his throat. I received a proposal offering preferential rates if we transferred our business to a new Hartwell subsidiary. I was told it was part of a restructuring plan approved by all executives. My father stood abruptly. This is outrageous. You have no right to bring outsiders into a private meeting. Actually, Patricia interjected. As counsel representing Ms. Hartwell, she has every right as an officer to investigate potential securities fraud and present her findings. I placed the manila envelope on the table. This contains an emergency injunction to freeze all company assets pending investigation into corporate fraud, unauthorized transfers, and securities violations. It's ready to file. The room went silent. My father's face had gone ashen. You wouldn't, Jennifer whispered. We're family. I looked at each of them before letting my gaze rest on Eli. That's exactly why this hurts so much. Family doesn't erase family. You didn't just try to push me out of the company. You tried to erase my son from his own heritage. No kids allowed at Thanksgiving? While your children were there, being groomed to take over what should have been Eli's birthright too. My mother looked away. My father's jaw worked silently. I turned to James Chen. James has offered me a position as COO at Chen Logistics with an equity stake. He's also prepared to make offers to our top talent. I paused. I haven't accepted yet. That depends on what happens in this room today. I moved to the head of the table, directly challenging my father's position. I've also prepared documentation for the major clients who were approached improperly. Martin has copies ready to distribute if necessary. Martin nodded gravely from his position by the door. I laid out 3 options. 1. We file the injunction today, triggering an investigation that will freeze company operations for months. 2. I accept James's offer, taking key clients and staff with me. Or 3. I paused, looking directly at my father. You make this right. My father leaned forward. What exactly does making it right entail? Full restoration of my shares. My reinstatement as CFO with expanded authority over all new ventures. Dissolution of Hartwell Next General, and most importantly, I place my hand on Eli's shoulder, acknowledgement of my son's place in this family and this company's future. The room held its breath as my father considered. Finally, he looked at Eli, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. He has your grandfather's eyes, he said quietly. And his mother's determination, I replied. My father nodded slowly. The board will need to discuss this. The board can discuss it, I agreed. But understand this. I'm not asking anymore. I'm not begging for a seat at your table. I stood tall, Eli's hand in mine. This is me telling you how it's going to be. 6 months can change everything. Spring sunshine streamed through the windows of my new corner office, illuminating the freshly painted walls and the framed photo on my desk, Eli grinning beside me at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for Hartwell Chen Logistics. The merger had not been my original plan. After that fateful board meeting, my father had asked for 48 hours to consider my demands. For 2 days, I'd waited, the injunction papers sitting and signed on my desk, a constant reminder of what was at stake. On the 3rd morning, he'd appeared at my apartment door alone. You look like him, he'd said quietly as I invited him in. Like who? My father. When he fought to save the company during the recession in the 70s. That same determination. We'd sat in strained silence before he finally spoke again. I was wrong about a lot of things. It wasn't quite an apology, but from my father it was seismic. What followed was 2 weeks of intense negotiations, with Patricia representing me and the company's attorney representing my parents and Jennifer. The outcome: my shares restored, plus an additional 5% in compensation. Tom removed from executive leadership. The Hartwell Next Gen venture dissolved. But something had broken that couldn't be fixed with percentages and titles.
Trust.
Which is why, when James Chen approached with a merger proposal, I'd been ready to listen. We're stronger together than as competitors, he'd argued. Your operational expertise, my international connections, equal partnership, and, he'd added with a knowing look, a fresh start. Now, staring at the quarterly projections on my monitor, I couldn't help but smile. Hartwell Chen Logistics was already 22% more profitable than either company had been independently. My father, who retained a 15% stake in the merged entity, had grudgingly admitted it was not a terrible decision. High praise coming from him. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. My new assistant, Maya, poked her head in. Your 2 o'clock is here. Send them in. Katie Peterson, Robert's daughter and the new CEO of Peterson Industries, entered with a confident stride. At 32, she represented the next generation of leadership, much like me. The expansion plans look solid, she said, dispensing with pleasantries as she took a seat. But I'm concerned about the timeline for the Sustainable Packaging Initiative. We spent the next hour deep in logistics and carbon footprint calculations. When we finished, Katie leaned back, satisfied. My father was right about you. You deliver on promises. I try to. She nodded toward the children's drawings pinned to my bulletin board. Your son's work. Eli's latest engineering concepts, I confirmed proudly. He's designing an electric delivery drone for his science project. Starting him young in the family business? I smiled. I'm showing him possibilities. What he chooses will be up to him. After Katie left, I checked my watch. 3:30 p.m., time to pick up Eli from his advanced STEM program. One benefit of being co-CEO, setting my own schedule. As I drove to his school, my phone rang through the car's speakers. Jennifer. I hesitated before answering. Our relationship remained complicated, a delicate dance of tentative reconciliation and lingering hurt. Hello. Rachel. Her voice sounded strained. I just left Dad's doctor appointment. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. How is he? The cardiac specialist wants to schedule surgery next month. He's asking for you. I exhaled slowly. I'll come by tomorrow. There's something else. Mason's birthday party is Saturday. Eli should come. If that's okay with you. Progress. Small steps. I'll ask him, I said, non-committal. The wounds were still healing, for all of us. At Eli's school, I watched him bound down the steps, backpack bouncing, deep in animated conversation with a classmate. His face lit up when he spotted my car.
Mom.
We're going to the robotics competition. Ms. Winters says our team has a real chance at nationals. As he chattered excitedly about motors and programming, I felt a surge of gratitude. Throughout everything, he had remained resilient, curious, compassionate, qualities no legacy or inheritance could buy. That's amazing, buddy. And I have some news too. Aunt Jennifer invited you to Mason's birthday on Saturday. Eli considered this, his expression thoughtful beyond his years. Do you want me to go? It's your choice, I said honestly. He nodded slowly. I think I will, but only if you come too.
Deal.
Later that evening, after dinner, I found Eli at the dining table, sketching designs for what appeared to be an elaborate treehouse. What's this? I asked, examining his detailed plans. It's for Grandpa's backyard, he explained. For all the cousins.
See?
This section is for Madison, who likes reading, this part is for Mason and his action figures, and this area is for science experiments. I studied the carefully labeled areas, a lump forming in my throat. It's wonderful, Eli. Do you think Grandpa will like it? When he feels better? I think he'll love it, I said softly. That night, as I prepared for bed, I received an email from our largest new client, a sustainable manufacturing company that had signed with us over 3 competitors. Their decision had pushed Hartwelchen's projections into record territory. Thrilled to be working with a woman-led company that shares our values, the CEO had written. Looking forward to growing together. I smiled, thinking of the journey that had led here. 6 months ago, I'd been fighting for a seat at a table that had never truly welcomed me. Now, I was building my own table, one large enough for everyone who deserved to be there. The next morning dawned clear and bright. As Eli and I drove to my parents' house, our first weekend visit since the confrontation, he looked up from his book with a sudden question. Mom, are we and Grandpa and Grandma okay now? I considered my answer carefully. We're working on it. Families sometimes hurt each other, but they can also heal if everyone tries. Like when you fix something that's broken, but it has those gold lines where the cracks were? Kintsugi, I smiled, impressed. Where did you learn about that? School project. The Japanese think the gold lines make things more beautiful because they show the history. Out of the mouths of babes. As we pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed Jennifer's car already there. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of my own words to Eli about healing. They thought they could erase us. But my son? He was going to build something bigger, on principles they clearly never had. And me? I was finally done begging for a seat at their table. I had built my own damn dining room. And surprisingly, there was room in it for second chances.